Hey, if we haven't met before, my name is Jake, and I'm so glad that you're here. Tonight, we're going to be in John chapter 10. So if you got a Bible with you, open it up, turn it to John chapter 10. If you don't have a Bible, that's all right. We'll have it on the screens, or ask the person next to you. I'm sure they're willing to share. I was reading an article the other day, and I know that's like a shock to you guys that I actually am able to read, but it's true, I am. I was reading this article, and I came across this question, and the question is this: what is, I think it's going to be on here. Maybe Malachi's not paying attention to me. I think it's going to be on the screens. No? The first question? That's the question. There it is. What is the most offensive thing that Jesus ever said? So if you're new around here, like at Flatiron students, we're all about Jesus. Like that's what this church is about. It points to Jesus. And as I was reading this article, I don't know if you knew this, but people think that a lot of what Jesus said is really offensive. Like, when you think about how people view the world in 2026, like some of the things that Jesus said don't really line up with how people view the world today. Like, for example, Jesus, and like, I'm not trying to be like hot political like topics or anything right now. Like, these are just some things that Jesus said. That there's only two genders, that marriage is between a man and a woman, that you should be generous with your money and not just keep it all for yourself, that you have a purpose, that you're not an accident. Like, Jesus said things that to modern ears feel a little bit offensive. Like, what do you mean, Jesus? Like, what do you mean that like marriage can only be between a man and a woman? I thought anybody can marry anybody because love is love. Like, what do you mean, Jesus, that you created us male and female and that's it? Like, what if I don't feel like I fit into one of those categories? Like, Jesus, that's kind of offensive. Or Jesus, what do you mean that like you get to be in charge of my money? I work really hard for my money. Nobody should get to tell me what to do with it. Jesus, that's kind of offensive. You guys track with me? Like Jesus said some things that we might find offensive, but what is the most offensive thing that Jesus ever said? This is what I think it is. It'll be on the screens next. I am the only way to God. So Jesus talks a lot about sexuality, money, what to do with your time and your talents, but what he talks about more than anything else is his kingdom. And Jesus tells us that he is the only way to God. At one point in the Gospel of John, in chapter 14, we'll read it in a few weeks, Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one can come to God the Father except through me. And if you stop and think about it, that's got to be one of the most offensive things that Jesus has ever said. Because what Jesus is saying is if Jesus is the only way to God, then every other world religion is wrong. Every other world religion is wrong except for Christianity, the one that follows Jesus. Like all of the other people that don't believe in Jesus can't have access to God because they aren't going through Jesus and he's the only way to God. Like that's kind of offensive. That some people would be in and some people would be out. That some people would get to come to God the Father through Jesus, and others would be trying to find God, but not find him unless they go through Jesus. Like, I don't know about you, but that feels kind of offensive a little bit. Like, what about that family member I love who's just like a really good person, but they don't love Jesus? Like, what about people on the other side of the world that just grew up in a different belief system? Like, it's not their fault that they might be of a different religion. Like, what about them? Jesus says, I am the only way to God. It's kind of offensive. And tonight I want us to look at John chapter 10 because Jesus has some really interesting words that tell us about who he is. And when he says things like, I am the only way to God, Jesus is not trying to be like excluding people. Like he's not trying to say that some of you are in and some of you are out. Jesus is trying to tell us about what he's like. And just because it's true that he's the only way to God doesn't mean that we need to be offended. Doesn't mean that we need to be frustrated or confused. So I want to look at this passage in John chapter 10, starting in verse 7. So if you got a Bible, follow along. If not, it will be on the screens. Therefore, Jesus said again, very truly I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. All who have come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep have not listened to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. They will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. So Jesus is speaking in what's called a parable right here. Like he's using an example from modern life to tell us about life in God's kingdom. And here's what he says. He starts by saying in verse 7 that I am the gate. So he starts to paint this picture. And I don't know about you, but I did not grow up on a farm. So some of like the agriculture examples in the Bible are confusing to me. But here's what Jesus is saying. He is the gate. And in a sheep pen, like what happens in the Middle East when you have a flock or a herd or whatever of sheep, they go inside of a pen during the nighttime to sleep. And it's surrounded by a fence, and there's a gate that they can come in and out of. Are you tracking with me? Like that makes sense to all of you? So Jesus is telling us, is that me? Good night. Wow. Yes, Lord. Okay. So Jesus is telling us that he is the gate. That the only way for the sheep to come in or out of the pen is through him. Does that make sense? And then he tells us that the thief comes only to kill, steal, and destroy. That's a really interesting thing for Jesus to say, that the other people who've tried to get into the pen and influence the sheep come to kill and destroy. But Jesus has come so that we might have life and have it to the full. So Jesus is telling us, I am the gate. You can't come into the sheep pen, which is like a picture of the kingdom of God, without going through Jesus. You can try to hop the fence, but if you do, that makes you a thief or a robber, and that means that you come only to kill, steal, and destroy. Jesus is the gate. And only through him can we have access to life and life to the full. And like, it's kind of offensive. Like, why is Jesus the only gate? Like, why aren't there some other gates that we can get in? Like, what if we just work really, really hard? Then can we make it into the kingdom? No, not unless you go through the gate of Jesus. What if I have like really, really good intentions? Can I make it into the kingdom? No, not unless you go through the gate of Jesus. What if I say I believe in God, but I never have a relationship with Jesus? You can't get in because you didn't go through the gate. That is Jesus. He says, I am the gate, but he also tells us that he's come to give us life and life to the full. I don't know about you, but like I'd love for my life to be full. There's a lot of days where it feels empty. There's days where it feels hard, where it feels confusing or frustrating. And I want my life to be full. And Jesus is telling us that only through him can we have a full life. Let's keep reading. In John chapter 10, verse 11, Jesus says this, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep. So when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. Then the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. The man runs away because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. Again, Jesus says in verse 14, I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep and my sheep know me, just as the Father knows me and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. So Jesus is continuing with this analogy of sheep and a pen and a gate and a shepherd, and he starts by saying, I'm the gate, but then he goes on to say, I am the good shepherd. So not only is Jesus the way we come in or out of the kingdom of God, but he's also our good shepherd. And there's three things I want you to notice about the shepherd. So if you're taking notes, write these down. You have to listen because they're not on the screen. The first thing is that the good shepherd sacrifices for the sheep. Write down sacrifices. The first thing that the shepherd does is he sacrifices for the sheep because he loves them, because he cares about them. And in this picture, Jesus is contrasting the good shepherd with the hired hand. The hired hand, it says when bad things happen to the sheep, the hired hand runs away because he doesn't own the sheep. The sheep aren't his. But Jesus is saying, I'm the good shepherd. I will lay down my life for the sheep. And if you know anything about the Bible, if you know anything about Christianity, about Jesus' story, then you know that that will eventually come true when he goes to the cross. You know that when he says, I'm the good shepherd who lays down my life for the sheep, he's not just saying fun words. He does it. He goes to the cross and sacrifices himself for his metaphorical sheep for us. The second thing I want you to notice that the good shepherd does, write this down, is the good shepherd protects the sheep. Write down protects. So first, he sacrifices, but second, he protects. Notice in the example, he says, when the wolf comes, which is a predator that wants to eat the sheep and have them for a meal, the good shepherd steps up and protects the sheep. Man, I don't know if you know this, like sometimes we don't spend enough time thinking about this. Like, we have an enemy called Satan that's real. And he wants to attack us. He wants to steal and kill and destroy. He wants to come against the kingdom of God. And Jesus says, I'm the good shepherd. I don't just sacrifice my life and then leave you be. No, I protect you. I protect you from the thief that wants to kill and destroy, that wants to steal your life away. So the good shepherd, he sacrifices for us. He protects us, but he also guides us. Write down guides. The good shepherd guides the sheep. Sebastian, let me see my shepherd's staff right here that I had you hold for me. I went and found this shepherd's staff today because I was reading this passage and I was thinking about a shepherd and sheep. And all day I've been trying really hard not to like just be Gandalf and say, you shall not pass, right in the middle. If you haven't seen that movie, get a life. It's the best. But a shepherd guides the sheep. But how he guides the sheep is fascinating. And I don't know if you knew this, but the shepherd guides the sheep using his staff. And I've often thought that like maybe the shepherd just like goes up to the sheep and is like, hey, chill. Like, hey, little sheep, like go where you're supposed to go. Hey, little sheep, go where you're supposed to go. Hey, little sheep. But no, the shepherd goes, hey, sheep, bang! And smacks him with the stick. Says, go this way. And then he comes up to this other sheep and he puts the thing around their head and then he drags them back where they're supposed to go. So the shepherd doesn't just go like, little sheep, go where you're supposed to go. Little sheep, you're fine. No, he goes smack, and he hits them. And then he wraps this thing around their neck and he drags them where they're supposed to go. That's how a shepherd guides his sheep. Which is fascinating because Jesus is telling us that he is the good shepherd. And some of you, I'll put my stick down before I hurt someone. Don't miss this. Some of you are expecting God to guide you with just like a little gentle nudge, like, hey, it's okay. Like, you don't have to do that anymore. It's not that big of a deal. But what Jesus wants to do to get your attention is he wants to hit you upside over the head and say, hey, come this way. You're going the wrong direction. Because here's what we know about sheep. Sheep are stupid. You guys are laughing, but you're the sheep. Did you think about that? Jesus is the good shepherd, but in this analogy, you and I are the sheep. And sheep are dumb. Like, did you know that a sheep, while it's grazing, while it has its head down, will literally eat its way off of a cliff? I'm not joking. Like, it will eat grass until it falls off a cliff and dies. That's how stupid a sheep is. And you're laughing. This is going to hit you in the heart. You're laughing, but some of you, like, keep looking at that same thing every night until you fall off a cliff and die. Like, spiritually. Like, some of you keep hanging out with those same friends over and over and over again until you make a decision that you can't come back from and you fall off the cliff. And if a shepherd says to the sheep, sheep, just come back, the sheep is too stupid to stop its destructive pattern and not fall off the cliff. So the shepherd has to take the staff, break the sheep's legs, and carry it away from danger. And some of you want Jesus to just say, come back, it's okay, when he needs to break your legs. Like, he needs to hit you with his staff so that you'll figure your crap out and he can carry you back to safety because he's a good shepherd. He sacrifices, he protects, and he guides, but sometimes his guidance looks like discipline. Sometimes his guidance hurts a little bit. Sometimes his guidance isn't comfortable. It's not what we wanted. But when those things happen, we have to remember we're the sheep and he's the shepherd. And sheep aren't supposed to talk back to a shepherd. Like, he knows what's best for them. And so when you feel like God might be trying to get your attention, when life gets a little bit painful,
when it gets a little bit confusing, like when it feels like Jesus is trying to grab you with that stick and pull you back to safety, but you don't really like it, I want you to remember that he is the shepherd and you are the sheep. So we started by saying that Jesus, the most offensive thing he ever said, was that he's the only way to God, that he's the gate. And then we saw that he's a good shepherd, that he sacrifices for his sheep, for us, that he protects us from the enemy, and that he guides us. But that sometimes that guidance looks like discipline. Sometimes that guidance can be painful. And that you and I are the sheep. We're kind of dumb sometimes. Sometimes we're so stuck in our destructive patterns that we don't see the inevitable end of our choices. And God's got to try to get a hold of our hearts. He's got to get a hold of our attention. But here's where the analogy starts to break down a little bit. All of us have a shepherd. Every single one of us. Like if we're the sheep, we all have a shepherd. And really the only question we have to answer is like, which shepherd are you choosing? Like who's going to be the person that leads your life? What's going to be the thing that leads your life? Because there's things in this world that want to lead your life. There's people in this world that want to lead your life, and they'll lead you right off the edge of a cliff as long as you're willing to follow. Because remember, Jesus says that he came to give life and life to the full, but the thief came to steal and kill and destroy. But sheep can't survive without a shepherd, and you and I can't survive without someone in charge of our life. Sometimes we try to be our own shepherd. Sometimes we try to know what's best for ourselves. We try to be in charge of every single decision, every single thing that we're going to do or not do. We think we know what's best, but we're really just dumb sheep, and I think we all know that in our hearts. That we don't have it figured out. And we're not designed to be in charge of our own lives. Some of us, man, the shepherd that you're allowing to guide you is your feelings. You're like, hey, however I feel in the moment, that's going to be the thing that guides me. When I'm with those friends and we're talking about that other person and it's like, I know this is turning into gossip, but it feels kind of good to talk trash about somebody who's not here, so I'm going to do it anyway. That's going to be the thing that guides me. Or man, I'm hanging out with my boyfriend or girlfriend late at night and like, I know that we probably shouldn't do the thing that I really feel like doing because I'm a person and I have those feelings. I'm going to listen to those feelings. Those are going to be the thing that guides me. Some of us, our feelings are our shepherd, and they're not a great shepherd. They'll lead you straight off that cliff. And you'll feel good the whole way down. And Jesus says, I want to be the Lord of your life. I am the good shepherd. I don't want to be in charge of you just because I like to be in charge. I want to be your shepherd because I know what's best for you. I know how to lead you in and out of the sheep pen to bring you to pastures where you can eat and be filled and have a good life. I know how to lead you. Will you trust me? Will you listen to my voice? Because I'm the only way to God. But I'm calling to you, and I want you to follow me. So the question I want you to think about tonight as we get ready to go into small groups and talk about some of these things is, what is leading your life? What's the thing? Maybe it's your feelings. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it is Jesus. Maybe you're like, no, I feel like Jesus is my shepherd. Talk about that. What's the thing leading your life? Because there is something. Sheep don't wander around by themselves. They all have a shepherd. So what is the thing leading your life? Because if it's not Jesus, then it's not the good shepherd. It might be an average shepherd. It might be okay. But I don't know about you. I don't want my life to be okay. I want it to be full. I want it to be filled up by God and his presence. And I think that Jesus is saying to each and every one of us, whether you've been on his team for a long time or you've never made the decision to be on his team, like, I want you a part of my family. I want to lead you. I want to guide you. I want to be a part of your life. And sometimes it might hurt a little bit. My guidance might look and feel like discipline, and that's okay because I know what's best. You can trust me. I'm good, and I'm the only way to God. Would you bow your heads and pray with me? God, thank you for tonight. Thank you that we get to be together and eat pizza and play games, sing worship songs. This week, would you remind us of John chapter 10, that you're the good shepherd? And when we feel like dumb sheep, would you remind us that we are? We need you, God. We're not meant to do this on our own. So when we feel lost, when we feel confused, would you tell us to look up, to listen to your voice? Would you guide us, even if it looks like discipline? Whatever it takes to be close to your presence, God, we love you. It's in your name we pray. And everybody said?